Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So yesterday, I was pretty mean, and I decided to list every single team in the NHL's biggest weakness heading into next season. And some of you guys wanted me to do the flip side, wanted to be Mr. Nice Guy, and instead do every single team's biggest strength. So we're going to do it. We're going to be nice today. I'm going to compliment every single team. Yes, even the Toronto Maple Leafs, even the New York Rangers, and give out every single team's biggest strength. Again, this could be their first line. This could be their bottom six. This could be their bottom two pairs. This could be their goalie tandem. We're going to run through it, and I'm going to give you every single team's biggest strength. And without further ado, let's get into it. And we're starting yet again with the Carolina Hurricanes. And for them, I'm going to go with the defense core. I still think they have an extremely elite defense core, despite them losing Brett Pesce and Brady Shea. I think getting Sean Walker and Shane Gothisbehere, they're not as good as that pair, but I still think that's a pretty solid second pair. So you look at the Carolina Hurricanes, Jacob Slavin, one of the best defensemen in the NHL, on that top pair with Brett Burns, who I still think is a pretty solid offense defenseman. Maybe his defensive game was never really anything special, but I still think that he's solid, as well as Gothisbehere and Walker on that second pair, and maybe the third pair. And the pair of Orlov and Jalen Chatfield was also very good last year. So I still think that they have either the best, second best, or third best. I can't really see an argument for them outside of the top three in the entire NHL in terms of their defense core. You know that Rod Brindamore is going to coach them up pretty decent for next season. Next up, we got the Florida Panthers, and for the Florida Panthers, I'm going to go with their top six, but not only just the skill within the top six offensively and also defensively, the physicality that their top six brings is just so impressive in my opinion. When looking at it, it obviously starts with guys like Matthew Tkachuk and Sam Bennett, but all of their presumed top six forwards are not afraid to throw the body. In fact, all of them threw at least 60 hits last season. So the fact that they have this high-end skill while also being able to just straight up punch you in the mouth every single night is a main reason why they made back-to-back Stanley Cup finals, and it is their strength heading into next season. I think last year kind of during the playoffs, I probably would have said their top three defensemen, but now they lost Brandon Montour. Next up, the Chicago Blackhawks. I think the goalie tandem heading into next season is probably the biggest strength. Petr Mrazek was very solid. He had a 907 while having a pretty shit team around him. He had like 10 goals saved above expected, on top of bringing in Brossoit that had a 927 on the Winnipeg Jets last year. He was great. He only played like 25 games, but he was fantastic for them. So I think the rest of their team is pretty bad, but I think the goalie tandem is actually about middle of the pack in the entire NHL. The Seattle Kraken. Yesterday I said that they don't have any star forwards, and that is true, but they have a very deep forward core in terms of just solid players. Again, I think they probably have a bottom 10 top line. They don't have an actual star, but I'm going to list you their 12 projected forwards. Matty Beniers, Jared McCann, Jordan Eberle, Chandler Stevenson, Jaden Schwartz, Oliver Bjorkstrand, Eli Tolvainen, Gord, Burakovsky, Shane Wright, Ty Cartier, and Brandon Tanev. That's pretty deep. That bottom six is going to be pretty goddamn good. So although, again, outside of McCann and maybe Beniers, I don't know if anybody's going to go above 60 points. They just have a lot of solid, like 40 to 55 point guys. So although they probably are going to get kind of get killed by other teams' top lines, they're going to have some solid depth scoring heading into next season. Next up for my New York Islanders, it's got to be the goalie tandem. Sorokin, the previous 2 years was a 924 and a 925, and even this year still a 908. And Varley stepped up in a massive way last season, having a 917, having like a 930 over the last 10 games to get the New York Islanders into the Stanley Cup playoffs. So heading into next season, I still think that they have a top two goalie tandem in the NHL. For the Buffalo Sabres, I couldn't really pick an exact unit, but I think their main strength that could lead to them being a very good team, and I talked about it in a TikTok video last night, is the fact that they're so goddamn young. Yes, that maybe could work against them, but they're hopefully going to have a lot of internal growth season over season and just into the season when looking at guys like JJ Peterka, Dylan Cousins, Zach Benson, Owen Power, Bowen Byram. They are just such a young team, so I think just naturally, even though they might not be that good, they're going to get better throughout the season because they're just so goddamn young. For the St. Louis Blues, it's got to be the goalie tandem that really carried them last year. They were like 29th in expected goals against per 60, but Jordan Binnington and Joel Hofer, who's only 24 years old, both posted 913 save percentages. And yeah, they were somewhat in the playoff race towards the end of the season solely because of that goalie tandem. You could also maybe say that their top line, if they're willing to put Buchnevich, Kyrou, and Thomas together, but that makes the rest of their forward core extremely shallow. So right now, I'm going to go with that goalie tandem. The Vegas Golden Knights, it's got to be their top three defensemen after getting Noah Hanifin Hanifin. They arguably have the best top three in the NHL. Pietrangelo, Shea Theodore, and Noah Hanifin is pretty goddamn disgusting. The Washington Capitals, I'm going to go with their bottom two defensive pairs. Not saying I don't like Martin Feravari and John Carlson as the top pair. It doesn't really stand out, but I think the bottom two pairs are very good when looking at Jacob Chikrin and Matt Roy on top of Sandin and Trevor Van Riemsdyk. I think that those are very, very good second and third pairs, and overall, it makes the Washington Capitals, in my opinion, have a top 8 defense core. In the NHL, the Tampa Bay Lightning, it's got to be the power play. When looking at it last year, they converted at a 28.6% clip, and they're just going to substitute Jake Gensel for Steven Stamkos, and I obviously Stamkos, and I obviously think that Gensel is a better player at this point than Stamkos, so I see no reason. Maybe Edmonton will pass them next season, but I see no reason why they can't yet again go for like 27, 28%, and when you don't have that much offensive depth, like I talked about yesterday, that power play just being so goddamn good can make up for a lot of that. The Calgary Flames, you got to go with the top two defensemen, Rasmus Anderson and Mackenzie Weegar. The rest of the defense core was their weakness, but that top two, that's two, in my opinion, like top 21 to 35 defensemen in the NHL. So it's very good in my opinion. The Winnipeg Jets, it's just Connor Hellebuck. He's just like the great equalizer, at least in the regular season. I think the Jets, in terms of their forward and defense, it's a perfectly fine team, but Connor Hellebuck just elevates them to possibly, or last year they were safely a playoff team. They had like 110 points, but I think next season they're going to be a playoff team, mainly because of Connor Hellebuck. He honestly should get more Hart votes, considering the fact of what he did last year if he does it again. The New Jersey Devils, I'm going to go with their second line, whether Nico Hischier or Jack Hughes is on that second line. Right now it's shaping up to be Jack Hughes, Jesper Bratt, and Dawson Mercer as a second line. I think Dawson Mercer is going to have a very good bounce back season. And again, your second line center being a potential 110 point guy, that is such an advantage. For the Boston Bruins, it's got to be their defense core, and especially the size of their defense core. Don Sweeney got a big ass defense core. Brandon Carlo, 6'6", Zadorov, 6'6", Mason Lohrei, 6'5", Hampus Lindholm, 6'4", Andrew Peeke at 6'3", and then Charlie McAvoy all the way down at 6'1". So not only are they just good players, I'm not just saying they're big dudes, they're just a solid defense core in terms of their two-way play, but also they're probably going to pummel teams, so that's their clear strength heading into next season. The Dallas Stars, even though they lost Joe Pavelski, I still think that they arguably have the best top 9 in the entire NHL. I think Maverick Bourque, he's not going to be Joe Pavelski next season, but I think he's going to walk in and be like a 40 to 45, maybe even 50-point guy. And on top of that, you just have so many goddamn weapons within that top 9, and guys like Wyatt Johnson and Stan Coven only getting better next season. So I think their top 9 is still their clear strength. It was their strength last year. For the Vancouver Canucks, I'm going to go at the top pair of Quinn Hughes and Philip Hronik. They had a 61% goals percentage last year on top of 54% expected goals in around like 800 minutes together. The Philadelphia Flyers, I criticized their center group, but I think they actually do have a pretty strong winger collection. Owen Tippett, Joel Farabee, Matvey Michkov, Travis Konechny, Tyson Forrester, and Bobby Brink. A lot of those guys are like under the age of 24, so they're only going to get better. And Travis Konechny and Owen Tippett are legit established good NHLers. So I think that they actually have a pretty solid winger core. The Colorado Avalanche, it's got to be that top pair of Cale Makar and Devon Toews. Had a bit of a down year last year, but that was after like 2 seasons of being without it, or 3 seasons of being without a doubt the best pair in the entire NHL. I think they're no doubt going to be a top 3, probably the best yet again this season. San Jose Sharks, there's not a ton of like strengths, I'm not going to lie. I'm just going to go similarly with Buffalo. Their youth, and I think that they're going to have a decent amount of speed coming into next season with some young guys. The Pittsburgh Penguins, their top 3 a defense core when looking at it like the Vegas Golden Knights, it's not quite as good, but Erik Karlsson I think is going to prove a lot of people wrong. Chris Letang is still a solid top pair guy. And Marcus Pettersson, I think, is one of the more underrated players in the NHL, two-way, more so defensive defenseman. Actually, his even strength numbers were very solid offensively. So that's a pretty solid top 3 defensive core. The Ottawa Senators, the first line, got to be their strength heading into next season. Kachuk, Stützle, and Giroux has been one of the, honestly, probably like a top 10 line in hockey the last 2 seasons, and I see no reason yet again, and I think if anything, Stützle is going to go even more nuclear this season and get back to 90 points. Claude Giroux probably back to around point per game. I think that line's going to be very good. The Utah Hockey Club, similarly to the Philadelphia Flyers, the centers are really not that special unless Logan Cooley takes a massive jump. But when looking at Clayton Keller, Nick Schmaltz, Dylan Gunther, Lawson Krause, Josh Doan, and Matthias Michelli, That is a pretty impressive collection of wingers. And again, some of those guys are younger and only going to get better next season. The LA Kings, I'm going to go with their center depth. It's going to be interesting to see if they play Kopitar and Byfield together or Byfield goes down to that second line. But if Byfield does go to that second line, you have Kopitar, Byfield, and Philip Deneau. That would be a very, very strong three-center deep, and especially two-way, especially guys like Kopitar and Deneau that are just so good defensively, Selke level. I think that is their strength heading into next season. The New York Rangers, I'm going to go with the special teams. They were third in both the power play and the penalty kill last season. We saw how massive special teams were in that series against Carolina. They have a lot of top-end personnel, and they play just so good on the power play. And then in terms of their penalty kill, it's also very strong, so that's their strength next season. The Montreal Canadiens, I'm going to go with their first line is Slavkovsky, Suzuki, and Caulfield stay together. I think Slavkovsky's going to take a decent jump. Suzuki's going to be hovering around point per game, and I think Caulfield is going to be around 35, 40 goals. Last year was only shot like 9%, so I think he's going to go up a decent amount. That first line, not saying it's like a top 10 line in hockey, but for the Montreal Canadiens, that probably is their strength heading into next season. The Nashville Predators, top six. It's got to be the top six after getting Steven Stamkos and Jonathan Marchessault, even though I'm not as high in Steven Stamkos as say others. Still, Ryan O'Reilly, Philip Forsberg, Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault, Gustav Nyquist, who was fantastic last year. He had like 72 points. And then you have one of Tommy Novak, who 2 seasons ago had 43 points in 51 games, or Luke Evangelista, who had 39 points as a goddamn rookie. That is a very, very good probably a top six in the entire NHL. The Anaheim Ducks, I'm also going to go with the top six. I don't think it's as good as Nashville's, but the Anaheim Ducks aren't that good of a team. So if I had to pick out one strength, it's got to be their top six. Alex Killorn, Carlson, Terry as that first line. And then the second line, Cutter Gauthier, Mason McTavish, Frank Vetrano. For a team that's probably going to be bottom 8 in the NHL, that could be a pretty scary top six, especially if some of their young guys take yet another step. The Columbus Blue Jackets, there's not a ton of strength. So as a result, I'm going to go yet again with like the Buffalo Sabres. They have a lot of young players that potentially could take that next step. If Adam Fantilli emerges as a 60 to 70 point guy, that would be massive for the team. David Jiricek, hopefully in a full-time NHL role. Denton Mateychuk maybe could be something. Cole Sillinger had a bounce-back year. Kent Johnson hopefully can be a full-time NHLer and get back on track, as well as Kirill Marchenko, I think potentially be a 30-30 guy. For the Detroit Red Wings, I'm going to go with the first line that they might roll out in Alex DeBrincat, Dylan Larkin, and Lucas Raymond. It was amazing for the first couple months of last season, and overall it had a 58.5% goals percentage last year, which was very, very impressive. If they rolled them out together, that could be a top 15, top 10 line in the entire NHL, especially if Lucas Raymond takes another step. The Minnesota Wild, their top 3 defense. I've already said that for 2 other teams, but I really like Minnesota's top 3 defense. You can maybe also go with the first line, but I'm not sure they're going to roll out their 3 best forwards on that same line. But the top 3 defense is very impressive. Brock Faber, what he did at 20 or 21 years old last year was very impressive. Jared Spurgeon, when he's healthy, he's one of the more underrated defensemen in the NHL. And then Brodin is still one of the best defensive defensemen in the NHL. The Edmonton Oilers, it's got to be their top 6, especially after Leon Draisaitl. That top line is going to be fantastic. It's been fantastic for the past 2 years. But now that Leon Draisaitl actually has Victor Arvidsson and Jeff Skinner to cook with, that is going to make this top 6 even more loaded. Instead of dealing with like Evander Kane and like Dylan Holloway or something like that, it's going to be much better this season, and it was already pretty good. Leon Draisaitl finally has some goddamn wingers to play with. And then lastly, the Toronto Maple Leafs, it's the exact same thing. It's also the top 6, even though that second line left wing is not too encouraging. They have 3 legit star players and 1 true superstar, so they're going to be able to generate a lot of offense. But let me know in the comments, what do you think about these strengths? Did I miss on any of these? What other strengths do you think some of these teams have? And I'll be seeing the next one.